Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today, we have a special guest by way of Florida. He's a former college football player. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. He's a husband. He's been featured in a documentary. He is a father. He's been through something that he's going to share today that is going to shock you, but also inspire you. Chris Norton, welcome to Pro Mindset today.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, for having me.
Okay, so Chris, let's talk about before the incident. What was your life about? You were a normal young man going to high school, playing football. Kind of walk us through before.
Yeah, before, I mean, you nailed it on the head. Just being an athlete was my entire life. Grew up in a small town in Iowa, and sports was life. Football, basketball, I ran track. In Iowa, you can actually do 4 sports. So I actually did a lot of baseball as well in the summer. But eventually in high school, I would go down to 3 sports. That was enough for me. But no, that was kind of our entire life, going to AAU basketball tournaments or, 7-on-7 football tournaments. Yeah, baseball, track, you name it. I felt like living the dream. And that was kind of what I would kind of build my identity around, was being this athlete. And, as I will share a little bit later, that would come to a halt.
Okay, so were you a Hawkeye fan or a Cyclone fan or something else?
Big Iowa Hawkeye fan. My parents met at the University of Iowa.
Oh, that's super dope. Okay, so give credit to your hometown. Where are you from?
Bonnaroo, Iowa. Small town outside Des Moines.
By Des Moines.
Yep.
North, east, south, or west?
East.
North. The window company. The window company. Yeah. Pella. Is it near Pella?
Yeah. Pella's like a 40-minute drive.
Okay. Well, I've been to Pella before. Before.
No, it's my brother-in-law works there, actually.
Does he? Okay. So let me paint the picture. You're an Iowa Hawkeye fan. You're in the Midwest. You're living a normal life. You're competing in lots of different sports. Probably went to homecoming and prom and all the fun stuff that kids do. And then you show up on a college campus. Where did you go to college?
Luther College. It's Northeast Iowa, Decorah, Iowa, Division III school.
So you went to Division III college in the state of Iowa, and you're playing football. So what happened next?
Yeah, it was the 6th game of my freshman season. I was able to work my way up onto all the different special teams units: kickoff return, kick coverage, punt return, punt coverage. And I was second team strong safety, and then starting to actually vie for the free safety spot at the time. Well, in the 6th game, 3rd quarter, we're mounting this comeback. We were behind a couple scores, and I ran out to the field for the kickoff. Kicker huddles us up. He calls the play, mortar kick right, which simply is a short, high arching kick to the right side of the field. And I don't know why we didn't just call it kick right, because our kicker was so bad. Every kick was short and low arching. But anyway, I'm excited. I play on the right side of the field, so it didn't matter to me. I just knew I'm going to get some action. In high school, I was voted like every year hardest hitter on the team. I kind of played with a reckless abandon. I would say I'm a clean hitter. I wasn't, cheap or dirty shots. I never had a concussion before, but I was not afraid of contact. And back then, if a wide receiver's coming across the middle, you can just flatten them. They've adapted the rules now. But anyway, that was just kind of my mentality of you either going to get hit or you bring the hit. So I'm running down the field. I see an opening forming, and my instincts are telling me the ball carrier, he's going to try to run through that gap. But I'm going to stop him. I'm going to drive my shoulders so hard through his legs and ball that hopefully he'll fumble it. And I go and I collide with them at full speed, full force. But I mistime my tackle by a split second. Instead of taking him down with my shoulder, I hit him head on. And the next thing I know, I'm laying there face down on the ground. I'm hearing players crash into each other above me. The whistle blows. The pile clears off. But when I try to get up, I can't. And I thought, okay, this is weird. I'm telling myself, Chris, just get up. I don't want the game to stop for me. Like, that's embarrassing. As a football player, as a gladiator, you don't want the medical attention or to be hurt. And I'm like talking to myself, trying to move, but nothing is working. It feels like someone flipped the power off to my body. Well, the athletic trainers run out, and of course the game is stopped. I'm embarrassed. They roll me onto my back, and I'm just thinking this whole time, wow, this is a really bad stinger. Like, I've had a stinger in high school that just like kind of like shut down my body, like temporarily. I couldn't get up. But after a few minutes, I was able to stand up, walk it off, and got back in the game. It separated my shoulder and broke a couple ribs, but you bounce back. Well, when I roll over, I make eye contact with one of the student athletic trainers, and I could just see in her face, she's terrified. So that was kind of my first sign of like, well, maybe this isn't a normal stinger. But I kind of like brush it aside, glass is half full, it's going to be okay. Well, they asked me questions like, hey, Chris, can you squeeze your hand? Couldn't. Chris, can you feel us touching your leg? I couldn't feel a thing. And what was even kind of scarier was like, not only could I not squeeze my hand, feel any sensation, but I didn't even know where my arms or legs were. Like, it felt like they were just completely erased from my body. Because if you close your eyes and you like move your arms around, like where they're at in space without even seeing them. Well, I had lost all those senses. And at the same time, I'm starting to lose the ability to breathe. And little did I know, like, a spinal cord injury, it packs your lungs. Your lungs is a muscle. And I was losing all capacity of strength below my neck. Well, they eventually call in for the paramedics. The cheering stadium is now eerily silent. My parents are there. They're nearby, and they're doing their best to reassure me that it's all going to be okay. And I'm trying to stay calm, but the moment they call in for a helicopter, that's when I know, like, this is bad. And at that point, my whole life, when I've had like a problem or, something comes up, I go into fix it mode. Like, well, how can I fix it? We talked about, off air, like problem solving. Like, how can I problem solve? Like, how can I make this better? And I will go to the ends of the earth to fix it. There's nothing I could do. And so I just close my eyes. I literally just try to escape reality and just pray. Well, they load me up. They fly me out. The flight takes 20 minutes, but as you can imagine, those were some of the longest minutes of my life. And then they rush me through a series of checks, scans, X-ray.
Where did they fly you to? Iowa City or somewhere else?
Mayo Clinic. So that's one of the definitely a huge blessing was that Luther College is about an hour, 15 minutes drive to Mayo Clinic. And so to go to a school next to a world-renowned hospital, and I think they were either number 1 or number 2 in the world for neurosurgery, was just, it was so grateful for. Actually, I didn't really know much about Mayo Clinic, and they asked me, would you rather go to Mayo Clinic or would you rather go to La Crosse? And I said, I don't know, like, which one's better? And they said, Mayo. Like, you want to go to Mayo? Okay, well, let's go there. Because they're about the same distance. So yeah, thankfully had just a great place there. And then, I get into the operating room and, I'll never forget, you're just staring at the lights, you hear the door open, the surgeon walks in and he asks, do you have any questions? I fight back the tears and I ask him, will I walk again? He just shrugs his shoulders and says, I don't know. And at that point, I can no longer hold back my tears. And the uncertainty was the final blow and just want to wake up from this horrific nightmare.
Okay. So that was in 2010.
Right.
Okay. And you were 18 years old.
Yep.
And you're a freshman in college.
Yes.
And you had the whole world in front of you.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I I was living my best life, and yeah, I felt like I was on top of the world.
What? I mean, I don't even know if you even know, but like, how did you stay hopeful when the doctor shrugged his shoulders and said, "Hey, dude, I don't know."
Well, at that moment, I was not hopeful. I was just absolutely devastated. The next morning, I wake up and, I'm blurry-eyed, groggy, in complete disbelief. I'm surrounded by tubes and wires, monitors softly beeping. I had my family there by my side. And although I couldn't even lift a finger, I was still kind of hopeful of like, there's just kind of like a ignorance of not just being naive of like, no way. Like I literally thought I was invincible at 18 years old. Like, bad things happen to other people. You read about in the newspaper, you watch on television. I guess you don't read about in the newspaper as much for anybody else. Something you don't read on social media maybe is a wiser choice of words. But I just thought there's no way something like that could happen to me. I just thought I was immune to it. Well, when the surgeon walks in, and one of the first things he says is, "Chris, we deemed you have about a 3% chance of ever moving below the neck." And my whole world just stopped right there. What? Like not a 3% chance to walk, which everybody thinks about walking with a spinal cord injury. And yes, that's a huge part of it, but there's so much more. Like that's a 3% chance to feel someone's touch, feed yourself, to scratch an itch on your face. And as the surgeon's gut wrenching words were sinking in, I did feel this rush of defiance of no way, not me. Like this is not going to be my life. Like I'm going to beat the odds and I will do whatever it takes each and every day to be a member of that 3%. And so I just going to work. And I think a big part of that, my whole life, it was just passed down to me. My dad you always told me, "Chris, if you don't like where you are, then do something about it." And just taking this what I call like a radical responsibility for my life, for my responses and just how I respond to life circumstances. And I really took that to heart as a kid because I was always undersized. I was always not the most athletic kid, but I had this chip on my shoulder. Like I will outwork you. I will be tougher than you. Like I will do all the extra nitty gritty things to excel at my highest level. And now being in that hospital, I was going to have to channel that same sort of resilience to a whole new level to get out of my spinal cord injury. And I still believed at that time that it was just something that I could just outwork, right? Like I put enough effort into this, I will be walking. I would later find out it has really nothing to do with effort, but has everything to do with science and God and what his plans for you are. But another thing too that helped me was a Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11 of, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans for a hope and a future." And although at the time it's like, how are these plans to prosper me? At the end of the day, though, I chose to believe, which isn't based on a feeling or understanding, but that hope just gave me that optimism, that courage to keep working.
I think everybody that's listening and watching can probably identify with this, that odds are really kind of crazy. Cause like you were told you have a 300%, 300 chance to even have feeling. And sometimes people don't get a choice, but a lot of times they do get a choice to pick the 97 or pick the 3. And because of your background in sports and competing, you told me off air, you played everything. You played, 4 sports, 3 sports during the school year. That's just what you do. You always plan on being the one. Why not you?
Yep.
I tell guys all the time, why not you? And then you couple that together with your faith, because when you have something like this happen, it's one of two things. Guys go one of two different directions. They either hate God and they kind of have this victim mentality, or they go, hey, God, how do you want to use me now? And there's some power that comes with God surrendering, and how do you want to use me now? You had a double dose of positivity because you had prayer and you had your faith, but you also you were going to be one of the three.
Yeah. And my family too, by my side, which is instrumental in their belief.
Okay. What was the hardest? How long did it take you to recover to a place where you're at today? And kind of share with everybody, where are you at today? What do you have a feeling of? What do you have use of? What mobility do you have? When you were told by this doc, you wouldn't even probably ever get out of bed.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just like this slow progression of, it started out like eventually I was able to shrug my shoulder. And then next started to curl my left arm a little bit. But I got to tell you though, like in the second week, for instance, I was working on curling my left arm. Like that's pretty much all I had. But, my goal wasn't to build beach muscles. It was to be able to feed myself, and getting the muscles to fire is a huge struggle. And the OT, she ups the stakes. She grabs a 1/2 pound ankle weight, Velcros around my hand and wrist. And I'm staring at the weight like it's 50 pounds. And my own body weight was heavy enough. And, as soon as I curl my arm, it starts to shake. I'm doing everything in my power to get this weight to my shoulder. And when I eventually do, my family and OT let out this huge cheer. It was so exhilarating. Like I had just scored a touchdown. Well, that is until I flashed back to 2 weeks earlier when I was in the weight room curling a 35 pound dumbbell with ease. And in the middle of celebrating that measly 1/2 pound, my cheers turned to tears. And I thought, like, is all this effort just a huge waste of time? And I think that's where the enemy comes in, the doubt, the changes that we experience. It just stirs up fear. And fear is a hope killer. It's like a bad photographer that only takes pictures of your worst moments and then tries to convince you that these unflattering snapshots tell your entire future. Well, thankfully, life isn't a photo album, it's a story. And we happen to be the co-authors, writing it one moment at a time. And I realize that if I don't take control of this dark chapter of my life, my fear will. And then it'll only get darker. And so how I kind of fight the uncertainty and the outside influences is just being radically responsible for my life and how I respond. And as long as I have air in my lungs, my story isn't over. I know there's going to be people listening to this right now who are in the middle of their dark chapter, one that feels like it will never end. Well, I want everyone to hold on. The page will turn, and there's so many chapters of life ahead of you, some that will be miserable, but others that are so good and so worth it. And so a motto that I kept telling myself during the season was, when you take care of today, your future will take care of itself. And so I just kept focusing on, what can I do today? How can I improve? And how do I direct this story where I want it to go to climb out of this hole? And at the end of the day, I just could not let fear take over. So that was like kind of a big moment for me of just like realizing the power of fear. And then so I keep progressing. And then during the 5th week, I'm in the hospital still. And despite endless, therapy and prayer, my legs were completely still. But then, one morning I feel the coolness of the air on my left big toe. And I'm ecstatic because it's progress. Well, my neurologist stops by later that morning and I'm telling him about the breakthrough. And I ask him if he could take a look at it. And he refuses. He says, this is a phantom feeling, which is common with your injury, but it's not progress. Well, I insist, like, this is different. It's not a phantom feeling. And he shakes his head and goes, Chris, you'll never move anything in your legs ever again. Then he just turns and walks out like, no big deal. Like, just helping you out, like, so you don't waste your time with all this effort. And as you can imagine, Craig, I was devastated. I all the hours and prayer that I've been putting into this, it just felt like it was all for nothing. And I'm sitting there with my dad, just like tears streaming down my face. And my dad, who he coached me in everything. Like he was just the dad who, he coached. He doesn't know anything about soccer, but he was my soccer coach as like in a little league. He coached baseball. He coached me in everything. He was just, and so having him there and just him telling me like, Chris, do not let people determine your future, but you. And it kind of just reinvigorated me to like, I'm going to go prove this doctor wrong. And so I re-up my therapy. I re-up my commitment with that drive. Like, I'm going to show this guy what's up. And not even a week later, on Thanksgiving morning, of all mornings, with my family by my side, I wiggled that exact left big toe that the buzzkill doctor said I would never move again.
That's awesome.
And I was pumped. I was so pumped. I told all my nurses and therapists that day, you go find that doctor, who I like to call Dr. Phantom. You bring Dr. Phantom here so I can tell him to phantom this as I wiggle my toe in his face. But fortunately for Dr. Phantom, he was gone that day, which worked out for the best. I was way too fired up. And that was kind of like the beginning of, getting strength back in my legs. Eventually I'm getting strength in my quads, hamstrings, standing with assistance. And this would just be a slow baby step progress every single day for the next few years. I would eventually go back to college. My roommates, my teammates, my football teammates, they would take care of me. They would sleep in the bed with me because I have these muscle spasms that I couldn't control. And so I couldn't fix my leg from falling off the bed, or if my arm came up, I couldn't fix my arm. So they would just be right there to fix it. They would, get me to class, drive me to my PT, OT appointments. So they quickly transformed into brothers. It was during that year that I set the goal, I want to walk across the stage to receive my diploma. And it seemed like a realistic goal because I had 4 years to get ready. So again, full class load, train every single day with different PTs, OTs, my friends, athletic trainers. My sister was close by, and then I would eventually walk the graduation stage with the help of my then fiance, Emily. We would eventually get married, but she helped me go across the stage, and that would go viral. Over 300 million people have viewed that clip across social media. We got to go on all the talk shows, the Good Morning America and NBC Nightly News, among so many others. And then that was what prompted like, okay, let's walk 7 yards down the aisle of our wedding side by side. And then, spoiler alert, we were able to walk 7 yards. That was what turned into the movie and the books, 7 yards.
Okay, so you probably don't know a lot about Pro Mindset. The Pro Mindset is a framework that you pretty much just described in a lot of ways because of the feedback loop and the choice that you had when you got your feedback. And in Pro Mindset, it's geared towards performance. You have to rewrite your story to go to a different place. You have to rewrite your story to have a more positive future. You have to elevate your standards, and then you have to show up on your stage operating in a performance bubble that you create that builds confidence, gives you peace. It's 100% belief in who you are, all these things. And then you fail. You don't win every time. And you have to learn from that failure and decide, is it my story that's got I got a flaw in my story that I need to tear out a page? Am I kidding myself that I'm actually working hard when I'm not? Or there's some things I need to be doing that I'm not doing? And then you go back on your stage again. And stage is phone call. It's an email. Your stage is on a stage when you speak. It's your stage is a conversation with a friend. But it's like, we're on a stage right now. You and I are on this stage. But it's like, you made the best analogy I can use. I thought of this when I was speaking this weekend out in Portland. We could take a raindrop. And I live in Colorado, and the continental divide is in Colorado. And if it's 1 inch to the east of center, that bad boy is going to end up in the Atlantic Ocean. And if it's 1 inch to the west, it's going to end up in the Pacific. So when you were told by Dr. Phantom that it wasn't real, you in your mind had to decide, are you going to fall on the side of, I'm going to trust that doctor and he's right, or I'm going to trust myself and I'm going to prove him wrong. And I think right there helped you join the 3% Club. Because right there, that decision, you made that decision hundreds of times. So you got to a point where in your mind, you're like, I'm good now. And, we talked off air that maybe you could even be better than where you're at now. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But you don't need the doctor, right? I mean, if you believe in God and believe in Jesus and have a strong faith, you don't need right? So how and why did your bride stay with you through this? Share like the context of your relationship that allowed, because 99% of people, and maybe almost dang near 100, 99.9% of the people, it's like, let's get, I got to move on. What was the nexus of the relationship that allowed you guys to stay together?
So we weren't together. I didn't even know her prior to my injury. We met my junior year of college, and we met online, had been kind of near each other and had some, she went to Iowa State University and wasn't too terribly far from where I was at. Just started with just a small conversation, but Emily has like this huge heart to impact others, and which shared my heart of like, how can I give people hope and help them? And so as we were just a casual conversation quickly, turned into just kind of sharing, our dreams for the future and what difference we want to make for others. And so we quickly just connected over that. Obviously I was intimidated that, she's gorgeous and I'm like, she's way out of my league. And especially with her heart and her character, like I'm going to eventually blow it at some point. And so when we were meeting up, like, I don't know if like I know she knows, but like, I don't know how much she knows her, like to the degree of my disability. I'm a quadriplegic. So I'll never forget, I'm waiting there, like some public spot in Ames, and I see her like walking across the street, and I've obviously seen photos, but like she's even more gorgeous in person. And I remember like my jaw just like dropped. I was like, okay, I gotta pick up my jaw, like keep it together, like act like you've been here before and stay cool, calm, and collected. But she, it was something that she just like wanted to see into my soul versus like what was on the exterior. It just was like all that other things are just superficial for her. And when you talk to her, she's just that kind of person. She goes to a deep level really quickly. Nothing is surface level with her, whether it's conversations or just how she approaches and values other people. But so we just had an instant connection. And, as they say, the rest is history. That doesn't mean that, it's like a love fairy tale where we're now a married couple in relationship with ebbs and flows and highs and lows like anybody else, but you work through it together and with a commitment to each other, in a covenant marriage. And so, just definitely blessed to have her.
And then you have 5 kids that you said that you've adopted. What motivated you guys to do that?
Emily, just, I didn't know hardly anything about foster care system or world. Like I mentioned, small town Iowa. I felt like I grew up in a bubble. I have just great family, great friends and influences that I had no idea this other part of the world was going on, just probably in my own hometown as well, of just the abuse and the trauma and the things that are happening to children all across the world. It's heartbreaking. And Emily was completely in that world because that's who she wanted to serve, like who she wanted to make a difference in was kids who just don't feel loved, who don't feel like they belong. And she wants to help them feel and give them that hope and help them feel loved. So she introduced that world to me. And, as we got more serious, she made it very abundantly clear that if we're going to stay together, that at some point we will be foster parents and likely adopt. And like, okay, like whatever you say, like if that, well, we can do that. And then, pretty quickly when we got to Florida, we were in Iowa, we moved to Florida and got our foster care license, and kids just started coming through the home. We've fostered over 23 kids to date. And, 4 of those girls that we adopted were sibling groups, and we just felt like we couldn't split them up. They were trying to split them up, and we had the means and the home and the vehicle to keep them all together. And we did, and we made it official to adopt them. And then a few years later, we adopted our youngest son, KJ.
That's awesome. Okay, so when you speak to groups, I'm sure you tailor it to your audience, but what is your theme? What is your key message? How do you, what's your signature story that you use to make people that, and then I'm saying this with all due respect, somebody that thinks they have a problem until they listen to you speak.
Yeah.
They think their problem's really big until they see you and hear you.
Yeah, that's definitely, I get that a lot. Yeah. So my signature keynote that I've been delivering the most here recently is called Stronger Through Change. Because in life, like, we're all going to face change. Like, we all know change is constant. While most of us will get through the changes we experience, very few thrive. And those that do, they always transform the difficult moments into sources of growth. So they grow stronger through change. And you see, my spinal cord injury didn't ruin my life. It reinvented it. It led to opportunities to inspire others that previously were inconceivable. Like the other weekend, like 2 weekends ago, I was able to speak on stage to nearly 40,000. So I'm not making tackles for my football team anymore, but I am able to impact lives. I discovered strength that you can't get from muscles. And our full potential is often hidden until life's toughest challenges force it to emerge. So change can be our strongest and greatest teacher if we allow it. And so I share my story and the lessons that helped me grow stronger through change. And so it will equip people and the ones that they love and serve to discover a power that exceeds anything they can imagine, so that they too can be that 3%. Because we're all facing our own 3% chances in our own way. It could be an obstacle that looks impossible to overcome, a mistake that feels like you can't come back from, a relationship that seems beyond repair. So there's always something going on. And so I just want to be that vessel that give that people hope, not only through my story, but then also the practical lessons that I can share and to help their organization, help their people get through the changes that they're experiencing.
What Bible verse resonates with that?
I would say one of them, I don't know the exact placement of it, but just his strength through my weakness. What is that one about? Do you know which one I'm talking about? I can't place it. I wish I could, but
Can't either. I'm not testing you. I'm just curious, matching concepts. Biblically, God serves the people the most that need that, that are the weakest. It's like the movie 400, 400 beat 10,000, it's like, I think when you recognize that with God's power and the power of the Holy Spirit, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, if you're 5'2" or you run a 4.9 or doesn't matter. If you've got physical limitations, doesn't matter. God will find a way to use the power to make an impact.
Yeah. No, his strength is made perfect in my weakness. And then also I think about Romans 8:28 of just God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so I've just been able to see him work these devastating things together for good. And that's where it definitely was something I couldn't understand or was hard to believe. Like, how can you work something like this for good? Like, there's nothing good that can come from a spinal cord injury. But man, he's proved me wrong.
What what do you like? You have a message on stage, but what is your dinner time message to your kids?
Something of this season of just reinforcing to them that they have a purpose, that they're called to do good works. God has good plans for them. You know, they've came through the system. They've lost their biological family and they've gone through trauma. Like it's, you know, anybody who understands that world knows there's been a lot of trauma. And so I think it can be easy to get swallowed up in the loss and what you wish could be different. And it's hard then to see how God can work this together for good, just the same way with my injury. So I think it's just reminding them of, you know, God's unchanging character and the good plans that he has and the purpose. And so that's something kind of our dinner time message that my wife and I just really want reinforced is that they're here for a purpose and there's good plans for them. And they keep going and have hope and watch how God works. But we got to do the work too, right? It's not a solo thing.
Absolutely. Okay. Share with us. I'm going to watch the movie 7 Yards. How accurate is it? Was it like 90% accurate? Is it 100% accurate? I mean, you know, I don't know how these documentaries work.
Yeah. I mean, it's so 100% accurate of, you know, I was a big part of the storytelling. We have, you know, family, friends, coaches, other people, doctors share in it. So you get different perspectives, which I think is really powerful. Now in the documentary, you know, this was 2010. And back then, you know, I had a flip phone. I wasn't using iPhones or, you know, the cameras weren't the nicest and my family's not very technical savvy. So we didn't record a lot of videos. So what we did do for the documentary is do a bunch of reenactments to help bring the story together and bring it to life. So as we can share the story and tell us things that happen instead of it just being a talking head, we have different moments that were recreated that just to bring it to life more. And so the moments are accurate, but they're just recreated in some areas.
And you are the actor?
Yeah. So I played myself and...
All right, bro. Hold on. That gives me my brain's going 100 miles an hour here. You got to relive your recovery a second time?
Yeah, they were short. They're very short. Like I'm not an actor, either of my parents. So that was one of my kind of big nervous points with the documentary as we were filming it, because you over film, right? And then you edit it down to the bare bones of just what you need. And, you know, because I kept saying, I'm not an actor, but they're like, we know that. But if you look bad in it, then we look bad. And the movie it won't make, so like, we're going to make sure that if it doesn't look good, we're not going to put it in there. So they're short reenactment clips. But I will say, as far as like you say, like at a relive, you know, I relive it telling my story, right? Like that's one thing. And I've gotten, there's been healing in that. But when I put on the football pads and they laid me down on the field where I was injured, that was spooky. You know, I went into it thinking like, oh, this would be a neat experience. But then I'm there on the field. I'm like, whoa, I've only been in this spot one other time before. And it was under much different circumstances. And you couldn't help but like your body and your mind go back to that place. And so during that filming, I kept like moving my shoulder. I kept like wiggling my toes. I kept like just kind of twitching and moving them just to remind myself like, hey, like you're not back in 2010. Like you can move stuff. Like you're in a much different place now. Don't panic. Don't freak out. So that was kind of like little things I would try to do while I was on the field. And I also got to say, when I did get the shoulder pads and helmet on, I still wanted to hit somebody. I had my buddies there and they had football helmets and pads. Like they helped to recreate it, which was really fun. We had good memories of that, but I wanted to hit them. I told him that I want to hit you guys. Like, you just put on the pads and helmet. And I was like, let's go.
Okay, so let's go back to being face down. In 2010, you didn't know really what was going on. Your brain was trying to assess what was going on. When your face was down in the movie, in the reenactment, what was the emotional connection you had? What was the emotional response you had then? Was it a sense of accomplishment that you were able to beat the odds? Was it?
I think it was empathy for the 18-year-old kid, of just thinking about, I wish I could comfort my 18-year-old self. I was composed. I wasn't crying or panicking, but like, don't get me, I was terrified. I was terrified as, things kept unfolding without any movement and the helicopters getting called. So that I kind of just thought about the fear of that 18-year-old self. And I wish I could just be like, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Like, I know you're scared, but it's going to be okay. Like, just kind of that comforting pat. I just thought about that because when I was on the field, people, like I said, my parents were trying to reassure me, hey, they're going to take care of you. It's going to be okay. But no one really knew. Like, no one knew if I was going to be okay. Right? Some people die from these things. And so you just don't know. So no one could give me that assurance that it's going to be fine in a way that I could believe them. And so that's kind of what I want to give myself at that 18-year-old kid, that it's going to be fine.
Okay, let's go back to the hospital scenes. And there's probably, several, but you mentioned two already. One is when you were told you had 3% chance of ever feeling anything. And the second one was you weren't feeling what you really were feeling by Dr. Phantom. Were those scenes in the movie too?
They were. And the one where my family is first consulted by the surgeon is told, and that's when they also were told about the 3%. And during that reenactment, my mom started bawling, crying. Like, it was too real for her. And again, she had to go through that once in her life and she never wanted to go through it again. But, she was a trooper and did it again. And when she did it, she just started crying, like lost it. So they're real tears in those reenactments. And obviously those moments in real life weren't recorded. I credit to my family too for getting the camera out and recreating it with other surgeons and at the medical fields. And I think that the film crew did a fabulous job because those moments are so powerful. It's hard to do it justice, just me saying what happened, but to actually see it, I think it just makes for a really strong film.
Before your injury, you were told by coaches you weren't good enough. Every athlete is. In some way, shape, or form, they tell you, whether it's you're not on first team or you don't get to the scholarship you were hoping for, you don't get the recognition, whatever the case may be. How did your sports mindset of just, fighting and, not taking no as an answer help you through the recovery?
Yeah, one of the things that I think about that really stood out to me in the hospital, actually, I thought about 2-a-days for football. And you have conditioning in the morning, and then you have practice in the afternoons. And it's in August, and it's extremely hot. And I had the brilliant idea my senior year one time. I went to a Chinese buffet for lunch in between these practices, right? Yeah, brilliant, I know. And so then we're doing, of course, coach is mad and making it so we're running a lot and we're doing these sprints across the field, and up comes my lunch, right? Well, up comes your lunch. You keep running. You go to the next play. You're not done because you threw up. You can't let yourself down. You can't let your coaches down. You can't let your teammates down. That was just kind of the culture of okay, not a big deal. You move on. Well, fast forward, I'm in the hospital, like it's probably like a month in, and they had this therapeutic bike that these electrodes would connect to your body and it would move your legs. And it was a very exhausting workout. And then we kept upping it and upping it. Well, up came lunch again. And after that happened, drank some water. They started taking me off the machine. And I had like 30 minutes left. I'm like, oh, like what's going on? Like, oh, like we'll just call it a day. Like, what? Like, I feel better now. I'm fine. Like, just because I threw up doesn't mean I can't keep going. I'm not like sick. I just, from exhaustion and whatnot, like that just, sometimes it happens. And like, oh, like, you really want to go? Like, yeah, I want to go. Like, why not? Would I not want to? Like, of course, like we got work to do. Like, I got a long ways to go. Like, we're working. Like, that never even crossed my mind that you would just hang it up but so I just think about like the football, like that would never cross my mind, and never would I expect a teammate who throw up and like, oh yeah, I'm done with practice. Like, no, you're not done with practice. Like, get your butt up and like, let's go. So I think about that with athletes and in sports, of how much that culture of just, you really get to show like how much you're made of and how much more you can do and take on. Something that I always say is like, when you take on more than what you think you can handle is when you realize your potential. And so the more you can add on to it, you're going to discover your limits. And I think sports is a great way to discover your limits and how much potential you have.
Wow, I love that. Discover your limits. That's another book for you.
There you go.
Okay. What is your perspective on the game of football? I have two boys that play. They still play. One has 3 credited seasons in the NFL, and he's currently at training camp in Texas for the Birmingham Stallions of the UFL. And my other son's taking off for Europe in 3 weeks to compete over in Hungary. They're high 20s, mid to high 20s. What is your perspective on the injury risk of football?
So I think I get asked that a lot with my spinal cord injury. And I would never dissuade someone from playing football because of a spinal cord injury. I think having a spinal cord injury is so rare and unlikely in football that the pros, that the things that you get from football outweigh the risk of having a spinal cord injury. And I also think they're making the game safer. I like what they're doing with the NFL and like doing the kickoffs. Now, do I think there needs to be some more changes? Of course, 'cause you want the kickoffs to happen, but I'm a fan of just not making these 40-yard sprints with 200-pound grown men running 4.4s, slamming into each other. Like, you're just asking for serious injuries. Now, something I am concerned about is concussions. I think concussions are a way bigger risk than spinal cord injury. So I think just be educated on concussions and how much or how little you're willing to take as far as that goes. Some people can keep having concussions. They'll keep going back out there. I wouldn't advise it, but I think that's your choice as long as you're educated on it. There's just so many great things about football that I love the game. I still watch it. I'm not a fan of the big hits anymore. That used to be my favorite part and why I loved as a player, but obviously my perspective changed on that. I still want contact and hits, but they don't need to be, like I said, full speed kickoff hits like mine.
Yeah. Who's your team in the NFL? Do you have one?
Yeah, the Minnesota Vikings is my team. So I love them to death.
Figure out who their quarterback's going to be.
I know. I mean, at the time of this recording, we might find out here today or very soon.
May find out in the next couple of days. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, Chris, I'm looking at the clock. I want to just thank you for being vulnerable, for being honest, for being real, for sharing your story, and more importantly, for being a man of faith and being somebody that makes a difference. And for every man, doesn't matter who you are, the most important people you can impact is your spouse and your kids. So I challenge you to be the best husband you can be the best father you can be. And I can already tell you make a big impact on your audiences, but the real people are the people in your home.
Amen to that. Absolutely.
But thank you everybody for listening to Pro Mindset today. Chris, where can people find you?
chrisnorton.org is my website. And then I'm also have Instagram and Facebook, all the social media stuff too. If you type in my name, it pop up. But,
Chris Norton. Check him out. If you're a company looking for a motivational speaker, he's your man.
Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.